What's up YouTube, and welcome back to another Procreate tutorial where today we're going to create this beautiful night scene where there's some sort of party atmosphere going on over here. Now, as always, there's links to everything you're going to need in the requirements link in the description down below. What that does is it takes you over to my Patreon, and there's multiple ways for you to grab all of the requirements for today's design. And don't be put off by the fact it's on Patreon, because all the requirements are completely for free. You need the canvas size, a very simple guide, and the palette for today's design. All the brushes are built into Procreate, so you won't need anything else other than those. And while you're over on my Patreon, make sure to check it out, because that's where I post 3 exclusive tutorials every single month to my Patreon supporters, and the catalogue sits at well over 140 exclusive tutorials at the time of recording. So enjoy today's design, and let's get started. Okay, so we're going to need 2 things before we get started. We want to go to our layers and make sure we've got the guide in play. All you want to do is go up to your actions, go to the option of add, insert the photo either from your photos or from your files, depending on where you saved it to, and then it will just add it in as a layer. And again, that is available over on Patreon completely for free for today's tutorial. The other thing we want to do, as always, is go up to our actions, go to the canvas tab. We'll add a drawing guide, edit that drawing guide, and set the grid size to 500 so that we have a 4x4 grid and we can lay things out and match up with our positioning. So let's start blocking stuff in. Let's create a new layer, drag it underneath our background color. We want to go ahead and then go to our colors. We want to grab this color here, top of the second column. We want to go to our selection tool. Let's use rectangle and tap on color fill to turn it on. And then roughly around about here, you want to kind of draw out a box. So we want the rectangle option. So just over here, roughly around about this height. Again, using rectangle, we're just going to go ahead and just create a box across for our watered area down here and tap on our selection tool when we're done. We're then going to go to our layers and create a new layer and drag it underneath that. And this layer here that you just created for the block, just rename it for a moment and call it water. And then underneath, let's just start working on our background. So on this layer, we're going to go to our colors and grab the color in the bottom right of the palette and drag it onto the screen. That's our sort of base tone for the sky. We're going to go to our brush and go to the option of airbrushing and the soft brush. We want a fairly largish size, probably around about 28%. And your color wants to be set to the middle of the far right column. Let's go left to right and just blend up a lovely gradient. So roughly around about that kind of top quarter of our canvas. I'm going to go up to about 40% here. I'm just going to blend, and you can see it based off of the grid, remember. So that top row, just we want a lovely blended out gradient like so as we make our way up. We're then going to go ahead and create another new layer. I'm just going to create a separate layer for this and then go to my colors and grab the pink in the top right of the palette. And then we're going to create a gradient that runs through the middle of that quarter as well. So nice and pink at the bottom, although you want to be a little bit sort of more gradual than I was just then. And blend it through there, creating a really lovely gradient over the top. You should be able to somewhat introduce some kind of purpley tones as well. Now I've done it on a separate layer because you may want to grab your cursor later on and move it up and down. Anyway, let's go ahead and carry on. Let's create a new layer. Let's go to our colors and grab the top of the second column from the right. Our brush wants to be set to the option of calligraphy and the monoline brush. And all you want to do, doesn't matter what your brush size is, just set it to something small. Just draw a circle and hold your pen at the end and pop one finger on the screen to create your moon, and then drag and drop your color in. If you grab your cursor and you use snapping in the bottom left down here, you can just move that onto that center line. It will go orange to let you know you're nice and central, and then you can tap on your cursor when you're done. Let's add some effects to this. Let's go ahead and swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Set the bottom one from normal to the option of pin light, and then go to your adjustments. You want to go to gauge and blur and swipe from left to right and just add in a lovely gradient in behind there, like a little glow. I'm going to go up to around about 26%. Then we're going to go ahead and go in front of the actual circle and create another new layer. Tap on it and clipping mask it to the moon shape. And then go to your colors and grab the middle of the second column from the right. You then want to switch it to the other brush that we're going to use today, which can be inking and the dry ink. I want a very low opacity, like 20%, and a fairly largish size, maybe around about 80 even. And in here, I just want to create those kind of craters that you would see for the moon. By all means, match this up to the real thing if you want to, but for me, just want a few over here, more so towards that bottom right area. Couple more craters. You can even make your brush size a little bit smaller. You can get some purposeful small ones, and then you should have enough texture there just to portray the moon. Zoom all the way out. That's all you want to have. And then when you're done, you can go ahead and pinch those two layers together if you like. And then the other layer to create is some stars. So we'll create another new layer. We'll drag it underneath our moon, of course. We'll go to our colors and double tap in the top left to select white. You then want to go to your brush. We want to go into the option of luminance. It will be called luminance for you in the light pen. I always max out the light pen in terms of size, and then I'm just varying my pressure throughout the sky to create some stars. Now, if you've done any of my tutorials before, which by the way, you should be subscribed if you are watching my tutorials, just triple check. But we always do like a big blanket of stars, and then you can get back in and add some smaller ones by scaling down this layer in a minute. Just copy paste it, scale it down. Don't do too many too low down into that pink area. Keep them more towards the top end if you can manage it. And also always don't forget to not drag. You just want to tap varying pressures. You'll get varying sizes of stars. Now if we go to the layer, just swipe it to the left and duplicate it, and just grab your cursor, use uniform and just scale it down. Scale it down over to say here, maybe even rotate it as well if you want to, and then just duplicate that one. Grab your cursor and just maybe move that one across as well, just to sort of flush out the sky with a little bit more of the smaller portion of stars. You may even need to rotate that as well, just to avoid any symmetry on two sides. And if you want to, just keep duplicating, making it a bit smaller maybe every time, just to again avoid duplication, sort of obvious sort of symmetries here and there. And with that done, I think I'm going to go ahead then and just pinch all the stars together. So it's just on one layer now, all the stars. So that's your background done. Let's go ahead and start moving forward. So if you want to, you can swipe from left to right on all of these layers underneath the water and group them together and just rename it like I normally do. And I just call it BG for background, and then collapse the group down. We're going to go ahead and continue working underneath the water layer though, but we're going to need to create a new layer here. We'll go to our colors and we've got a bunch of blues that we need to be working through. Now I'm going to start with this one here. I'm going to start with the top of the third column from the right there. I am going to go ahead and use calligraphy in the monoline brush, and I may even tap on the monoline brush and just check my stabilization and bring that down a little bit, just so I can get some more jitters should I feel that they're necessary. So 41-23 for me. Brush size is set to the smallest it needs to be, and we're going to start working in all of the sort of islands over here. So I'm just going to run in, and they've got a bit more of a kind of curved shaping to them, and then occasionally have these like lovely, beautiful drop downs. And then I'm going to go all the way off to the left hand side, and then so I can drag and drop my color in. We'll then go to our layers and we'll create a new layer and drag it underneath the last one we were working on. We'll go to our colors and move it to the next blue, so it's the middle of that third column from the right. Now this layer is going to be a little bit lower, I imagine, so let's just bring it in from here, maybe swoop it up to around about that halfway point, and then just let that kind of just fall down, and then go all the way off to the right, drag and drop your color in. Let's then go to our layers and create a new layer and drag it underneath again. Now we're going to keep with the same color though, so we're going to start all the way over here and create one that's going to roughly run to around about there. So I'm going to come all the way through here, just right off the edge, and then just coming through up into there, up, and then again those kind of lovely steep kind of drop offs, and let that kind of run in behind all the way off to the right, so you can drag and drop your color in. Just triple check you don't have too much of like an overhang. You don't want it to kind of look incorrect in any way. So let's just go in here, and you can always get in here and make adjustments, of course, at any time. You can just adjust the general shaping of it should you feel it's necessary. I think that looks pretty good. I think the only thing I could do is if I hold down on my eraser there like I just did, it makes it the monoline brush, and I'll just go ahead and maybe just start to think about, actually, could I better round that off just so it matches the aesthetic a bit more, and I like that. Let's then go ahead and go to our layers and create a new layer, drag it underneath again. And again, we're going to stick with the same color, except now we're going to make our kind of main mountain-ish area, and that's going to sort of come over here a little bit. So I want it to sort of rise up, and I want it to be quite sort of steep in terms of its rise. So I want to come in from the side there, up into a point, and then round off a bit of a kind of dome-like shape, and then that staggered effect. And then maybe I'll run actually across here, and I'll just run in another little bit of land all the way off to the right. So I've created like a pretty interesting shape there. Then let's go ahead and go to our layers. Let's create another new layer, drag it underneath again, go to your colors, and we'll grab then now the bottom of the third column. And this one's just going to be a bit more of a filler style piece of land. You're just starting off a little bit further back and you're kind of just running in the gaps. You're trying to avoid running into corners of other pieces of land mass. And then just all the way off to the right, drag and drop your color into that bottom area. And then let's go to our layers again and create another new layer. Drag it to the bottom. And then we'll go to our colors and grab the bottom of the second column from the right. And we'll create some very, very distant sort of islands or island-like mountainous shapes. And to be honest, you could probably run it all the way off to the left and just have a little something there on the right. So you can just drag and drop your color in. Now, this is why I said earlier on you may want to keep your sky layer separate, because in the background group, the pink layer that we created, you can grab your cursor now if you need to and just move it up if you want to get some more pink. I will probably refine this later on. I'll move it up a little bit for now, but that's what you can just start to consider. Now, we're going to go ahead then and also think about potentially even moving this one up as well, or even flattening it, because I did it on one layer. I could probably squish that down and get a little bit more blue in there like so. So I'll do that and we'll refine perfectly later on. But you can see now that dark, the blue and the pink all in there in that leftover little bit of space in the sky. Okay, so now it's just a matter of very simply detailing some of these layers. So this layer here at the very back, let's just tap on it and alpha lock it. Let's go to our colors and grab then, we want this color here. It's the bottom of the, that's the bottom of the fourth column from the right. Your brush wants to be back to airbrushing and the soft brush. And I reckon around about sort of smaller than that, probably around about 12%. Just a little bit of a sort of gradient of color down here. So you're just blending in this color in this gap. Try not to go up to the very top edges of your shape either, if you can manage it. But just a little bit of that little sort of color in there. In the end, if you add in too much, you can always grab the color from the top and kind of blend backwards like so, like push it back down. It's totally up to you later on to make refinements. We're then going to go ahead and go to the layer above. So that's another mountainous layer there. The only thing we're going to do on this though is we're going to go to our colors and grab the bottom of the third column from the right. It's the same color. We're going to go to our brushes. We want to be in organic and you want the rainforest brush. Now ignore this one up here. If you swipe the rainforest brush to the left and reset it, tap on reset, we're going to tap on the rainforest brush. We're going to go to its spacing and just bring it up to around about say 50, 55%, something like that. And then hit done. And then now we should be able to just create some vegetation in the distance, nice and small. So I'm probably going to bring my brush size all the way down to like a 1%. I'm just going to kind of rough up the edges of the shape a bit more. So you can just run it up and down, not all the way across the entire thing. In fact, probably could go even smaller, down to almost the tiniest 1%. I just want to occasionally just have that lovely little break up in the sort of shape to make it less, more interesting and less boring. So like a little something there in the distance just to break that up. Maybe a little bit on the edge of this one here. And it should just add a bit more texture throughout the whole of the design anyway. Now, once you've added in a little bit, in fact, I'll just bring that down a tiny bit more. Same as we did before. We'll just tap on the layer and alpha lock it. We'll go to our colors and grab the bottom of the fourth column from the right. And your brush wants to be the option of airbrushing and the soft brush. And just like before, just a little bit of a gradient towards the bottom, just kind of creating that lovely misty effect. You can be really, really light with your pressure. In some areas, you can be a little bit more vibrant and punch the color in. But you're ultimately just trying to create separation between your sort of mountainous layers here. So that's why we do it. Let's then move forward a layer. Now we've got the main mountain. It's going to take a little bit more work. The first thing we'll do is we'll tap on it, a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it to the shape. We'll go to our colors. We'll go ahead and grab this blue above it. So it's the middle of the fourth column from the right. Your brush wants to be set to the option of inking and dry ink. And I think if you set your brush opacity to about 35%, let's start with a size around about 19. You want to take a look at your work here and just see if you can integrate some kind of like rocky kind of lines here. Now, maybe try and sort of keep your pressure consistent so that you don't end up with too many small tapers on the end. But, based off of the moon glow, what would get some love here on the very edge of your shape? So just a little bit of stone-like lining. And like they're usually quite vertical as well into here. So don't forget you're also sort of behind this shape here. So this one here is going to have its own space. That's all you need to do here. The next step is to go ahead and create some greenery. So we'll create a new layer again. I'm probably going to keep this one unclipped for a minute. So we'll go to our colors and grab the green at the top of the fourth column from the right. Your brush wants to go back to the rainforest brush. Now you can just go right to the very top of your brushes now and go to recent and then just grab the rainforest from here. So these three are the ones we're going to use. And then we're just going to set the size probably to around about 1 to 2%, probably closer to 1. And then you're just going to try and add in some greenery on top of some of these areas. Now let's actually bring the opacity down. Let's go down to about 32%. You could probably go even smaller, but you can just layer in some color. You can also take a look now, because you've laid out the blueprint, you can also run some green down some of your rocky structures here and just show how the greenery has consumed this mountain top here, because it's just constantly reaching up for the sunlight. So I'm just going to punch in a few little sort of areas here of light greenery up here, occasional little splash of colour over the edge. And then once you've kind of laid out where you want it up and down here, like I do want one main super kind of run here like I'm doing right now. I want to make sure that the edge is also nice and green, so I'm going to run in some green up and down there to the point where now I'm going to go back up to my opacity and make it about 80% and just punch in those greens, trying to first of all also, if we're going to do this, get rid of a little bit of that kind of monoline like shape for the shape of the actual piece of rock here, the mountainous kind of shape. And then in there just kind of patching in little areas of bright greenery just to give that side a little bit of a punch. You can also go back in over there and just add in a little splash of colour here and there, like so. And then we're going to go to our layers and create a new layer. Set the blend mode from normal to the option of add. We'll go to our colours. We'll go ahead and I think we can grab this colour here, bottom of the fifth column. And let's just maybe set our opacity a bit lower. Let's go down to about sort of 30%, and then just we want to brighten up the edge where the moon is. So now you're really telling everybody looking at this like what's catching the light and what's not. Now I do really want to emphasize this edge like a lot. I want this to be really bright just over here. Maybe a couple of specks of light just on the very top up here as well. Just tap in to add in some variety. A little bit of green on there too. And then you can maybe break the brush size a little bit smaller and opacity a little bit up. And then just tap in randomly little specks of something. But again, I ultimately just want to make sure that that edge is nice and bright, because that's going to depict quite how bright the moon is in this night scene and make it quite believable. And zoom all the way out. Just take a look at what you've added in. Triple check you've added in enough green. Of course, you can always go in through your layers now, which is lovely, and go back through. I've just made the brush size a bit bigger, up to a larger 1%, just to see if I can just tap to add in some random joining between these two sides, just to make sure it's not just line after line after line. So you end up with some join and just show how the growth is just really excessive. There we go. Lovely. Now the only thing left to do is that little bit of atmosphere at the bottom. You can go down to the shape, you can tap on it, you can alpha lock it. You can go to your colors and grab the bottom of that fourth column from the right. Brush, soft brush, and set that size again, about 10%, and just look for where you can separate these two layers. Lovely, light bit of haze running up there, a little bit off the back, and in fact you could probably even blend this almost in with the color here to kind of show it just rising out of nowhere. This is the problem though, is if you press too firm here, I didn't press technically then hard enough at the back. So you want to just kind of find that balancing point that it looks like it blends in, but it's obviously not. You can bring that size down to maybe about 5 or 6% and just randomly a little bit of further, a little bit something raising up potentially. And then the only other thing we need to remember is the atmosphere does technically crawl over here. So you can just see I'm just trying to go towards the bottom of the shape there and just add in a little bit of atmosphere like that. There we go, lovely. Now that also separates this shape in front, which is what of course we're going to move to. So we'll go up towards that layer. We'll tap on it and we will alpha lock it so we can't paint outside of it. And while we're doing the atmosphere, let's just do that. Let's just carry on. So a little bit more towards the bottom here. Now, to be honest, you could probably run a really good strong amount just down here and then blend that up just so that your kind of water's edge has a really lovely amount of color. And then don't forget, you've also got another island that's somewhat hiding here because it's the same color. So you may need to bring your brush size down to like a 5% and just slowly try and reveal that layer with some really light pressure. And just so you can just make it appear in behind. There we go. Let's then move to this layer again. So let's go ahead and on this layer, let's go ahead and create a new layer in front of it. We'll go ahead and go to our colors and grab the green again, top of the fourth column from the right, brush, rainforest again. And we'll just do exactly the same process. The moon even is right here. So I've currently got a 49% opacity. I've got a size, I'm going to punch it up to 1 to 2%, a little bit larger. And then I'm just going to, in fact, that needs to be a little bit smaller. Just going to run across here and just work out the areas of land in which there is a little bit of greenery, just getting enough. Technically the whole place would be covered in greenery, but it's nighttime, so you can't see most of it anyway. So here it's just a matter of identifying the greenery that's just glowing in the night, basically. And just a little bit on the top edges, that's all you need. A little bit running off on the left. And then just like before, just bring your opacity back up to like an 80% and just punch in some green areas that you know you want to make a little bit more dense and stronger in terms of more color, or something like that. We'll do the trick. And then just like before, we create a new layer, change the blend mode from normal to the option of add, change your color to the bottom of the fifth column, and then get back in there and probably bring the opacity down to about sort of 50% just to start with. Brighten up that top edge where you want your moonlight to really depict the edge and the shape of it, a little something like that. Lovely. You don't have to do everywhere, as always, be sacrificial. Try and, not do as 100% of the land that you've colored in green. It doesn't need to be like that, but just a little something like this should do enough of a trick. Now again, of course, you can always go back to your green layer and grab the same green and maybe just add in like tiny little patches of something here and there in this big body, but don't do too much. Just a tiny bit will do the trick. Now this area of land down here, we're actually going to somewhat leave it. We're just going to make it look quite minimal. So, and also that's probably blocking it anyway, so we'll leave that. So we're going to move to this one here on the left hand side. We're going to go to that layer. We will go ahead and create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it. Now we're going to replicate this stonework up here. So we're going to go back to our colors and grab then the middle of the fourth column from the right. Your brush wants to be set to dry ink. We've got the opacity down to 35% again, size 19. And just on that right hand side over here, you can just add in all the rocky groove like lines of how the flow of the stone makes its way around this lovely curved shape here down towards the water's edge. And just little lines basically all the way down. That's all you need to do just to try and show off the stone and the shape of it. And by all means, because this one's a little bit closer, bring your brush size down to like a 5%. Maybe just get a bit detailed with it. Find yourself some areas that you want to kind of further explore. However, of course, we're going to add greenery on top of this, so it may get lost in a minute anyway. So just keep it to a minimum if possible. Let's then go ahead and start adding in that greenery. So let's create a new layer. Let's go to our colors and grab the green at the top of the fourth column from the right. Your brush wants to be set again to rainforest. We've got the opacity set to 46%, that's fine. Still got that same 1% from before. And then we'll just add in some green on the top and the edge in which the moon, I get very close to saying sun, that the moon is brightening up here. And this is probably going to come through and land on here, I imagine, so I will add some on there. I'm going to leave a big cavern-like shape or groove even, big dent in there. And then I'll run some more green along there too. So I'm just patching in little sort of areas of green all over the place. A little bit more on that top edge. And again, just like before, we go up to about 80%. We work out what we want to make super green. Super green. And then we'll come along here. Lovely. And then from there, we'll go ahead, create a new layer, change the blend mode from normal to add again. Then go to your color and grab the bottom of the fifth column. And just like before, we do exactly the same process. Probably bring your opacity down though to 46%. Take your time to build up the levels of highlight, your brightest spots. Down that edge, maybe a tiny little glimmer. Actually, no, do you know what? I'll leave that. I'll add in a bit on there. And that's just enough to show that moonlight, boom, casting through. Now for this back area, the final thing to do is go ahead and create a new layer. Go to your colors and grab that color again for the atmosphere at the bottom of the fourth column from the right. Your brush wants to be set to the soft brush again. We want to have probably around about 12% brush size. Now what you could do is on this layer, tap on it and use the drawing assist, which is going to use the grid system that we've put on the screen. So I can just go horizontal now, absolutely perfectly. I've set my size, let's set the size to around about 14%. I can just go horizontal multiple times until I'm happy with the glow. You know, I don't want it to be a solid line, so you know, you can go a little bit lower at times, you can go a little bit higher here and there. You kind of want to just really fade out the bottom of this one here, and likewise this one over here on the left hand side too. So I may just patch in a tiny bit more there, maybe even a bit more over there on the left, just to kind of break up that straight line. Now I will go ahead just very quickly and turn off my drawing guide just so I can get rid of that line, just to see if there's any area there that I can just maybe smudge up to break any sort of solidness of the horizontal element. Now I'll go back and turn it back on because we need it. So that is your background area done. Now you've got a couple of options. You could go left to right, like I'm going to do. Select all of those layers for the background. Every single one. I say background, they're the mountains. You could group them together, which I urge you to do anyway. And then you've got a decision. You could either tap on it, rename it. So I could call it, let's just call it hills, keep it simple. Or you can tap on this group and flatten it. That should somewhat, I say somewhat, preserve your add layers. However, you know, it's up to you what you want to do. Now, before we reflect this, we need to go to our water layer. Let's go ahead and create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it to the water. Let's go to our colors. We want this color here, this beautiful blue in the middle of the second column. Brush still wants to be the soft airbrush, and you probably want to be around about that 40% range. We want to create a big gradient of color. I'm really light with my pressure at the minute, just trying to build up a gradient down towards the front here, but I do want to leave that darkness, but I do also want to make sure it's nice and blue. So it's a bit of a sort of task to make sure it's like a bit more solid in this quarter, and then it's a little bit more faint down here. So that is your water. Now let's go ahead and actually reflect this. Now, as long as you turn off your guide at the very top here, if you've got the guide in play, the easiest way to do this now is to go to your water, just above your blue there, create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it. Then tap away, swipe down with 3 fingers and go to this option here of copy all. Then swipe down with 3 fingers again and go to paste. It will have pasted in, if we go to our layers, your entire design on one new layer. Then all you want to do is go ahead and change the blend mode from normal to the option of hard light, ignore all the changes, and then bring the opacity down to about 50%. Then grab your cursor, zoom out a little bit and go to flip vertical, and then you can bring that down. You don't need to bring it perfectly down to the point where it aligns like that. You can, that's your choice, but you can just maybe punch it up just a tiny bit. Now you want to make sure your moon is in place. I'm also going to grab freeform and just squish it down, squish the reflection down just a tiny bit, bring it down a tiny bit more, and I'm going to do exactly the same again, just until I'm happy with the reflection and the moon position. And that looks pretty good, so I'm going to tap on my cursor when I'm done. Now, we also want to go ahead and smudge this, so we're going to go ahead and go to the layer, we're going to tap on it, and we're going to use the drawing assist, which is that horizontal and vertical of the grid. You want to go to your smudge tool. Let's tap on your smudge tool and use the soft brush under airbrushing. Maximum opacity, size around about 2% just to start with, and let's run through that moon. Let's run through that moon, breaking it up, smudging highlight to the right, bringing in the dark tone to break up the shape. You want to, of course, break down all the shapes, so you want to kind of run horizontal. You can have some nice perfect reflection, mind you. Don't be afraid to also change your brush size, so like a slightly larger 2% now, to run through here and really break down that shape. And like I said, you don't have to break down absolutely everywhere either. You know, you can have some solid-ish like reflection in here. You do not have to feel the need to destroy everything. And as you get further back, of course, your brush should get a little bit smaller where possible. And you probably want to keep the rest of it a little bit more sort of muted as you get further back, in terms of not too much craziness back here. Like, I'm not going into the shapes too much and destroying them. Just a little bit of a reflection. Your moon is the most important. We're going to have something here later on. We're going to have something here later on. So it's more this central area that you just want to break down and just make sure that your moon has some kind of zigzaggy like shapes like this. Now let's go ahead and add in some additional colors that we need for here. We're going to go ahead and create another new layer. Let's tap on it and clipping mask it. We're going to keep it as normal. We're going to go to our colors and grab that atmosphere color again, bottom of the 4th column from the right. Your brush wants to be set to the soft brush still. Let's make it around about, say, 25%, 20%, and just go along that horizon there, just blending it together. So I'm just trying to go across enough that eventually they kind of have a little bit of a kind of more muted colour, and it kind of all fades off into this kind of misty colour in the distance. So it's kind of white almost. Now you can always go ahead and just tap on it and bring it down a little bit if you want to, or up. I'll probably tinker with it later on. So I'll leave it about 88, that's fine. We've got one more layer to create here for the water, so we'll create a new layer, tap on it, clipping mask it, change the blend mode from normal to the option of add, and your colour wants to be set to. We need a lovely colour like this one here from the moon, so middle of the second column from the right. Set that brush size to around about 15%, looks quite good. And then very lightly here, you're going to drag down and get a little bit heavier as you do. So you go down and then just blending out like a bit of a glow onto the water. Now you don't want to be too heavy, take your time with it, but a little bit of colour coming through onto the water will look absolutely beautiful. In my pre-practices I did make this really bright, but we can always come back to it, can't we? That's the beauty of it. So your water's all done. You can now swipe from left to right for a minute and group them together, and then of course rename the group and call it water so you know what to look for later on. Now we do have reflections to add, but it's not technically necessary to have your water group as layered. So you could tap on this and flatten it if you want. Let's collapse BG down as well. Now in front of the water we need to add more land. So we need to create a new layer again. Go to your colours. We're going to work with this colour here, top of the 6th column. Your brush wants to go back to the monoline brush, smallest size it can be. And then we need to create another piece of land that's just over here, roughly around about halfway through here. And we're going to just run that across, give it some bumps and lumps if you want to, and then just give it a basic kind of shape just up and around, up into here, and then drag and drop your colour. Now you can then get in here and just tidy up anything that you feel is necessary on the end there, for example. However, we're going to go ahead and go to our brush. Let's go to the rainforest brush and set the opacity to 100%. Size 1%. Maybe a tiny smidge bigger because we're a bit closer. We're just going to go ahead and just jungleify this whole piece of land. I'm going to go a bit smaller again, just so I can have a variation in my my greenery kind of vibe to this. So I'm just trying to break up this. I'm just trying to show that this is just dense jungle all the way down to our water's edge, like so. And you can have a little bit of monoline in there, that's perfectly fine. We will go ahead and of course create a new layer. Go to your colours. Now we're not working with the previous green, we're working with a new set of greens. So this one here, the middle of the 6th column. Your brush wants to be about the same kind of size, but your opacity probably wants to come down to about 50 to get started with. And again, just like before, all you're doing is just laying out where you want the greens. So majority up here. Now it's a very subtle green, so you might want to punch it up to about 80%. And maybe a little bit here in the land, a little bit up here. And this could be the final colour technically, because maybe the other islands are all getting in the way. But we'll punch out and just add in some very simple foresty vegetation and just greenery, lovely greenery. I'm going to add in like a random sort of few kind of swirls almost to sort of symbolise maybe like tree-like shapes almost, all the way down to the bottom. Now we'll go to our colours. We'll grab the bottom of the same column. Your opacity can stay at 85%. We're just going to add in on the same layer, that's perfectly fine. Just some more patches of variation in the green. If you think you've got a gap that your moonlight can come through, absolutely awesome. Let it build up, build that colour up, get some lovely yellow in there. And if you think it's going to get in the way, like this one here, very little. That's all you need to do, of course. Think about things and the light angle, and would something get in the way? I think it would crash through here and it'd look absolutely lovely. But back here, those dark greens can live and take over. We'll leave that like so. Now over here, because this is all inspired by like the Philippines and East Asia, we're going to go ahead and add in kind of what I imagine is on each island there's some sort of parties happening right down by the water or the lake, whatever this may be, or even the ocean. And we're just going to symbolise that with some very simple kind of lighting. So I'm going to go to my layers and create a new one. I'm going to go to my colours and we're going to let's grab this colour here, top of the 4th column. Your brush wants to be set to the soft brush under airbrushing, and we need to probably bring the opacity down and the size too. So I've got 2% and then 36% opacity. That's probably a random number, to be honest with you. All I'm going to do is just down here, a couple of light patches very close to the ocean or lake, whatever this may be in your imagination. We can just add in what is the idea of like distant lighting. okay? But then, and maybe even set your brush size to like a 3%, and then just give it a light coat, you know, just a little bit larger, enough that you can just create like a little bit of a light glow. And I keep saying that because you want to be ever so slightly sort of just alluding to the idea, nothing too heavy. Now I say that because we're also then going to go to our layers and create another new layer. Change the blend mode from normal to the option of add. Bring your size right down to around about say 1%, I imagine. And then down in here, you can just really punch in what would be like little bits of light in the distance. And you could have like, you know, a large one here, a large one there. You could even have one a little bit further back if you wanted to. And because you're at a low opacity, you can just keep tapping and build it up. Zoom all the way out. Make sure you're just giving that kind of nod to, you know, people and distant lighting. That's all we want to do. It's a little something like this along that edge. There we go. Some sort of parties happening. Now, just to make that kind of blend in with its environment a bit more, we're going to create a new layer again. Go to our colors and grab the same color, which is going to be the top here of the 6th column. Your brush wants to go back to the rainforest brush. And with your settings all as they were, just lightly go around some of the edges of them to kind of make it look as if they are maybe recessed even. So like that one's a little bit more recessed now into the jungle, and maybe a little bit more over the side here as well. Stay within the shape if possible. It's just a minor detail that might just allow it to embed the natural and the human-like spaces together a bit more. Some distant trees blending in with the party. So what we'll do then is we will go from left to right on this little piece of land, group them together, and we'll rename it and call it, let's call it land 1. Now, just like before, you can then go ahead and tap on it and flatten it if you want to, or you can swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The top one, just go ahead and tap on it and flatten it for a minute, and then drag it underneath land 1. Then go to your blend mode and change it from normal to the option of hard light. You want the opacity down to around about sort of 70%. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab our cursor, we're going to flip it vertically and drag it down just towards the end of the land is a little bit kind of linking up there, and you should end up with a lovely reflection. Then what you want to go ahead and do is smudge this down. So we're going to grab our smudge tool, and you need to kind of gauge roughly where your lighting was. So if I grab my smudge tool, first of all, let's go horizontal. Let's smudge out some of the land, you know, horizontally, and get rid of some of its solidness. So you can just smudge, maybe even a bit smaller than that, like a 1%. Use the drawing guide if you need it. In fact, I will. I'll go to the layer, tap on it, and use the drawing assist. Just makes life a lot easier. You can be so much, you know, less caring. You can just be really rogue with it. All you're doing is creating a smudge reflection anyway. It's nothing major. Little something like that. And then you want to look where you've got your lighting. You're going to have to gauge it over here, but here's a bit closer. I'm going to smudge that down. I want to find those glowing points and push them down to create like a lovely glow in there. So I'm just smudging them down. I'm finding this, which is probably going to be a little bit higher, I imagine. I need to find it. I think it's going to be way higher. It looks like it is. So I'm going to move across. I'll just carry on for a minute. Let's try and find some lighting that we can smudge down. Now, if you can't, there's a very simple way we can do this. We'll just draw back in. So I'm just trying to see if there's anything. I can't find anything. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we will go to our layer. We'll create a new layer. We'll tap on it and change its blend mode to the option of add. We'll keep the opacity high for a minute, probably bring it down, and then tap on this layer and use the drawing assist. Go to your colors and grab the orange, top of the 4th column. Let's go to our brush and change it to the soft brush. You can keep that 35% and a very small brush size, 1%, and find out where you've got a glow and just run a bit of a line down like so. Just really light and just push that lighting down. But of course you can build it up if you want to. So you're just trying to create those lovely long reflections, that's all. I'm just going to go ahead and just try and run a few like there. And don't worry if the end of your streaks here end up a little bit kind of blunt almost. We'll fix that in just a second. I'm just trying to create some reflections off of them. Might even emphasize these ones on the end here a bit more. Lovely. And then from there, you can just go to your adjustments, go to motion blur, drag down in a vertical fashion, and those lines will really diffuse themselves in the distance. And then you can go ahead, I've gone to 27%, you can make the decision. Do you want to swipe it to the left and duplicate it for some much needed additional lighting, or turn it off and keep it subtle? I'm going to just keep it subtle for a minute. So let's move to our kind of main focus area, which is over here. We need to turn back on our guide. It's a very simple guide. I just wanted to make sure everybody was in the same boat in terms of positioning this. So I'm going to go in front of land number 1 and create a new layer. I'm going to go to my colors again and grab the top of the 6th column. And your brush wants to be set to the option. Let's just set it currently to the monoline brush, maximum opacity. We'll just draw in a general shape. And I mean this like so literally, like just draw in like a blocky shape that goes along there, and then drag and drop your color in, and then go to your brush and go to the rainforest brush with a maximum opacity, size 1 to 2%. You want to be a little bit bigger than you were in the distance because this is a closer piece of land. And then all we're going to do is just keep going round and round and round and round and round to just break down that monoline shape, just show that this is a huge green bit of island. It's going to run all the way down towards here. On top of this line is fine. You can have a little rogue one going a little bit further out if you want to, just to show randomness, which of course I love to always mention, don't I, in my tutorials. The randomness of life is so hard to replicate. And then we'll go underneath here, just go left to right a little bit, just to create a little something like this. Just a bit of a diagonal line underneath the hut there. And I might even go like a little bit higher here and create some much needed higher height on this side. Lovely. From there, we'll go ahead and add in the green tone. So I'm going to stay on the same layer, that's perfectly fine. I'll go to my colors and grab the green in the middle of the 6th column. I'll tap away, and just like before, moon is over here now. So we just go along here, adding in the green on the ends where we want to. Be sacrificial, leave certain things a bit darker. If you've got a main big tree like I do, get that green in on that left hand side, really get it in. A few taps in the main shape is perfectly fine, you know, like a few little rogue bits of green here. But just like before, you just want to make sure that the very edge is your most green spots. Then go to your colors, we'll grab the green just below it, so it's the bottom of that 6th column, and again we just reapply where we want the highlight. A couple of patches here and there, couple on here too, very light on those edges, and then I'm going to really chuck in the color over here, make sure this is nice and green. Lovely few patches like so, and I think maybe a couple of specks here and there just to show a bit of extra color. Let's move on to the actual hut. So let's go ahead and create a new layer. Let's go to our brush and change it. I want the dry ink brush, and I want to set it to 100% opacity and size, probably around about 3%. I want to go to my colors. I want this darkish kind of red tone at the top of the 6th column. And the first thing I want to do is draw in this line. So what I'll do is I'm going to tap on my guide. I'm going to invert it to white so you can see it a bit easier, but also tap on it and bring its opacity down to around about 19%. Just so that you can vaguely see it, and it now sort of stands off against the contrast of the background. So using the new empty layer underneath it, we're just going to draw in some shapes. So I'm going to go all the way along here, hold down at the end to create a straight line, and we're just drawing in that wood-like decking out here, this wood structure. From there, we're going to go ahead and then just draw in the house. So I'm going to draw in a straight line down on all 3 of those columns, go across, just follow the guide and the outline of it. And I'm not saying the guide's perfect, by all means change it if you want to. I'll drag and drop the colour into there, and there's obviously a gap somewhere, probably there. Drag and drop your colour in, like so, or colour it in manually, both are fine. Then we'll go ahead and go along the top edge here with a little bit of a gap. And again, you want to be parallel to the line below and hold your pen down at the end to create a straight line. And then from there, you can create lots and lots of sort of wooden, you know, joins together, columns and poles and all sorts of bits. You could even tap on the layer and use the drawing assist as well, so that you can just freely just make sure that they are completely upright. Loads of columns all the way along here. Lots and lots of wood-like structure. It doesn't even have to be even. On the end here, maybe we'll extend this out a little bit and then just create the underside of the decking. So it now sort of sits on top of the water. Maybe some distant legs in the background as well. You know, just lots and lots of wood-like structure. It doesn't even need to necessarily make too much sense. You can see I'm also not really sort of flirting too much with trying to make sure it's too perfect all the time. I just want to make sure I've got those kind of wooden poles all running into the water along here. And then I'm also doing like little thin ones in between, just to kind of show that the wood is a little bit further back as well. But maybe the ones here at the front that connect to this decking here, maybe they are a bit chunkier and they're a little bit more forefront here at the front here, just to add in that variety. Again, not really fussed too much. Maybe there's like additional kind of wood and stuff at the back here, maybe more poles on the decking for whatever reason. Just little accents that we can add in, little bits of minor, somewhat detail to it. Now I'm just going to make sure that these have a little bit of length to them. I'm just going to maybe just extend a few of them. Also just take a look across the board and just triple check that they are somewhat even. That looks fine to me. I'm going to go ahead now and start colouring in. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer and tap on it and clipping mask it to it. I'm going to go to my colours. The first colour we want to work with is going to be let's go to the red tone, so the middle of the same column, middle of the 5th column. I'm going to bring the opacity down to 50%. I'll keep the size the same. And what I want to do is I want to just detail the hut primarily just to start with. So the first thing I want to do is just separate this top area here. Now, I want to bring my opacity down, probably down to about 35%. I want to just show all the lines of this kind of wooden structure here. So like all of the lines across here. And then there's a bit of a change here where this is a flatter little bit of roofing almost here. So just a little bit out like this. You don't have to overcomplicate it, just keep it simple. Maybe a little bit more red towards the middle, just so that you can see where the lighting would obviously land. Maybe a little bit of colour along that top edge there, a little bit of a line there, and a little bit of a line here too. From there, I think you could even go down to a 20% opacity and just add in a few little lines here just on the top, very, very subtle, to kind of show the opposite kind of flow. They're very, very simple. And then we're going to go ahead and move into the highlight tone. So we'll go to our colours and grab the yellow at the bottom of that same column. The yellow is only going to really get used on the top of the house. So I've gone up to 35%. I'm going to go along this edge here, up that very, very edge there of the house. I'm going to come down this line here. It's just going to get used to almost separate these elements from one another. So a little bit of a line there, a little bit of a line across here. And then just on the edge here, I'm going to kind of almost try to show that the sort of material and the structure kind of rolls over and comes to an end, but all the lighting is crashing just on the very edge here. So that's why I'm just highlighting it with a little bit of yellow. You know, you could add in the occasional little bit of light running through here, just a few little streaks at the top. And then we're going to switch it to what I would refer to as the nicer highlight tone, this one here, the top of the 4th column. And then this is where you can maybe add in a few more kind of like orangey like streaks here. So let's just triple check I grab the right color. A couple more orangey like streaks here in there. And then underneath is where we now really detail. So I'm going to probably go up to something pretty high, around about say 80% opacity. I want to sort of add in structural like elements of highlight. Let's bring the opacity down 50%. Let's not go too crazy too quickly. Joel, I'm talking to. And then the underside of there, maybe a little bit more of an underside highlight there too. And this building is just engulfed in light in a minute. So, you know, all these details are just there so that we can have something to look at. I've gone down to 35%, and it's just in case we pick something out through the glows, we can just see all of this. Now, it's then important to then work on your decking. So you want to kind of run a line across the top of your decking. I'm going to bring it up to 50%. And turn off your guide as well, just so that you can see your line completely. Now, you'll notice I'm trying to avoid the columns of the wood because I want to try and sort of, in a minute, do this where I'll go down here like that. And I don't want to have the highlight run through there because that doesn't make any sense. So I can run down my columns here and I want to bathe them in light in the same way. So I'm going to probably go up to a higher percent now, 70%. And just bathe all of the accents here with light. Not on the underside though. The underside, of course, is completely out of the way. The top edge of this barrier as well. There's very, very simple bits of highlight, but they'll look great in a minute when we add in all the glows, etc. And don't be afraid when you get close to the building, you know, go a bit higher with your opacity, like 85%. Now here you're going to have to use your imagination and triple check, you know, what you drew in. You may even have to essentially draw this all back in again and, like, you know, reimagine columns and framing and all that kind of stuff. Zoom out. That's what we're going for. That's the kind of vibe. Don't get lost in it too early. Brighten up a few of these columns a bit more. I can always add more later, but for a minute, let's just get all those details in. So I'm trying to look for the columns underneath as I'm doing this and just imagine where then the poles are. And then I can go down the poles. I can go across that top of the barrier there that I can see. It's very faint on my screen, so I imagine, of course, it's the same on yours as well. And then a couple of columns. And then as you start to make your way over here, the angle of the light just needs to flip a little bit. So now you're highlighting the left-hand side of these areas. Little something like that. Lovely little bit of structure. Now let's just crank up the lighting. So let's go to our layer. Let's create a new layer. Change the blend mode from normal to the option of add. Go to your brush. Change it to the soft brush. Opacity 35% just to start with, so you can build it up. Let's set the size to around about, say, 5%. That does look pretty good. And then ultimately it's like just here that you want to really brighten up. Don't worry about the underside. We'll sort that out in a minute. You want to just give yourself a nice big glow. I've just made the brush size a bit bigger so I can create this generalized area of glow over here. A little bit something like this. And then I'm going to bring the opacity up 55% to 60. And then just underneath here again, just really want to punch out the lighting. You know, there's lots and lots of warm, beautiful lighting under here. And then we'll go ahead and grab another new layer. Set the blend mode on that as well to the option of add. Set the opacity probably a little bit higher, about 79%, and the size a lot smaller, down to like a 1. And then on the columns here, let's go even smaller than that with the size. On the columns here, you can just add in additional lights everywhere you want to. So you can add in like little lights here. Now they'll look lovely and warm over here. Now, just like me, you might be seeing them as quite white. So I would go back to the layer underneath that we just worked on and just spread that color across to make sure this whole environment over here is bathed in warm lighting. So I'm just going to run that across a little bit more. That's perfectly fine over there. And then I'll go back up to my light layer, the one I was just working on. 1 to 2%. Of course, you probably want to be down to that smaller size, just so you can get some really cool little bits of lighting in here. And you can just add in tons and tons of little bits of lighting. You could even add in like almost like fairy light style bits of lighting as well. You know, I'm going to add in some light all the way underneath this hut. Could be a, you know, just a tropical holiday. I don't know what it will be, but you just add in lots and lots of lighting. And it looks really nice against the contrast of the blues and the pinks of the rest of it. And that's just punching in highlights where I think maybe there's a light, maybe there's a something here, there, everywhere. I'm going to add in a few more over here. Add in a few there, and maybe some like distant ones as well. So if you can make your brush pressure really light, size maybe even a little bit smaller, you can maybe add some like a little bit further back. I'm going to make that a bit bigger again. Just a few lights in the distance. And then, you know, feel free to, again, just daisy chain some lights here and there, you know. Add these little string lights all the way down to certain areas. Let's do the same over here. This is on the fly, by the way. I didn't initially intend to do this, but I'm in flow state, really. So we'll add in some lovely fairy lights in there. And I just want to make sure that if we go a little bit larger with the brush size, about 2%, just over here in these areas, we just really, really, really want to punch out that lighting. So I'm just going over the top again, adding in a bit more of the glows, making sure it's quite excessive. You know, zoom all the way out. That's what we want. Now from there, we're going to go ahead and start to work on the underside and the reflections and so on. So we'll go ahead and we will create a new layer and we will drag it underneath our hut. We'll go ahead and go to our colors. You want to grab this purpley tone at the bottom of the 4th column. And we want the soft airbrush still, probably around about, say, 9%, if not slightly bigger. And your opacity probably wants to be 100%, but just be very light with it, of course, as I always say. And then just go along the underside here, darkening up the underside primarily of your little hut and the land or the plinth that it's on. It will change the colour of some of these lights in behind, and I love that, to be honest. It makes it a bit more purpley. And then just over here, where this starts to extend a bit too far out, you can drop the shadow right underneath, like this. But then you want to go ahead and just make the shadow purposeful. So for example, we go down to 1% and we just create like a bit of a blend down of some of these poles here into the water. Some of them a little bit darker than others. You know, the base of them as they connect into the water, you can make a little bit darker and it will look fantastic. You're just creating those little reflections in the area that we can still see that's not completely bathed in shadow. Let's create a reflection. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and grab your hut. We could swipe from left to right on all of those and group them together. We could go ahead and collapse it down. Swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two, tap on it, flatten it. And then we want to go ahead and reflect it. Now, of course, the colors are going to switch ever so slightly, but that's not a problem. We want to go ahead and grab our cursor. Let's flip it vertically and drag it down till we've got a little bit of a reflection. To be fair, it probably needs to be a bit higher, like so. What we then want to do is tap on our cursor. We want to tap on the layer and we want to bring its opacity down a little bit because we want to be in manual control in a minute. So I'm going to bring it down to about 50%. And then I'm going to go to my adjustments and I'm going to go to motion blur. And I'm going to drag down in a vertical fashion. You want to make sure you're as straight lined as possible. So a little something like this. And then grab your cursor. Maybe now you can afford to move it down a tiny bit more as well. And tap on your cursor when you're done. And just like before, go ahead and use your smudge tool. Tap on smudge and make sure it's a soft brush under airbrushing. And go to your layer. It should say assisted already because we did it earlier. But if you tap on it and just make sure it does say drawing assisted turned on, you can just get through there now and just start smudging out that shape, 1 to 2% brush size, break it down here and there, get through some of those reflections, be a bit, really sacrificial, as I like to say, really cut through all of them. It's more important to show the ripple of the water, etc., than it is to preserve that. Now we do actually have another layer and highlights to add into those ones because I really want to emphasize their like streakiness, and I'm going to absolutely rip through the top of this area of the hut here just to really break that down and create a lovely reflection and break those down a bit more. Then what we're going to go ahead and do is create some really long draggy reflections. So we'll create a new layer, change the blend mode from normal to add, go to your color and grab the top of the fourth column, go back to the layer and tap on it and use the drawing assist. I'm going to set the brush size to 1 to 2%. Now you want to try and find roughly where you think the brightest kind of spots are. Of course there's a bright spot here. So what I could do is I can find out where that is and just roughly roundabout sort of leave a gap and then just run in a bit of a streak like so. It just needs to be a little something like this. And then randomly pick and vary your reflection. So I'm going to randomly pick another one, say like here. I'm going to make that a little bit bigger again, and then I'll pick another one, say, I'm going to pick another one off from here, I think. Let that run down. I'm going to have another one around about 1 to 2% just in here. I'm going to let that one come quite close to me. And then I'll bring that down to 1% again. A couple more light streaks in here. 1%. You're really now sort of picking and choosing where you want to accent. Just bringing that light in a bit closer towards us. It will look so nice. And don't worry about sort of filling out and matching absolutely everything. That's really not important. Just a little something like this. And in fact, we'll be a bit cheeky and add a few more on the end because there's also light over here too. And you can get through some of the big ones and maybe even just tap a few times in the center of them just to add in more of a core to them. Add in a little bit on the end there. Then what you want to do is just like before, you want to be quite sacrificial. So you want to grab your smudge tool. You just want to go ahead and run through it. Now try not to sort of smudge it to the point where you like add color anywhere else. You just want to smudge it like through here, break up these because you want, this is the most important part here because this just makes your reflections absolutely pop. So you want a little something like this. You want to get in there, break down all of these, varying sizes, 1 to 2%, absolutely fantastic. And you just want to break them down. A couple of cut throughs here and there. The alternative as well is just to hold down on your eraser and use the soft airbrush as well, down to a 1 or 2%, and just make a cut. You don't have to smudge, you can just make a cut, which is even more kind of sacrificial because you're not going to drag that lighting across and into the next one. You can just very lightly run across almost all of them. So you've got kind of two options here. You pick which one's your favorite. I'm using the eraser currently, just trying to cut through here, and then I might even like really break those down. And you can always erase if you want to some of those excessively smudged lines if they are, kind of taking your eye a little bit too much away. A couple of erasing lines through there. Zoom all the way out. You should end up with some fantastic reflections. And you have full reign here to go to your layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it, go up to another layer. I was quite heavy with my color straight away, so I can afford to maybe only go one higher. However, I could go to my adjustments and go to motion blur and just drag them down in a bit more of a vertical fashion, just like so, to kind of smudge them out even more. So like 33%, and then grab my cursor and just maybe move them down a bit more. There we go. And that just maybe adds in a little bit of extra drag as well, which looks even sort of prettier as well. And let's work on the foreground. Very simple for the foreground. We're going to go to our layers. Now, for the minute, you can go ahead and sort of leave them as they are. You just want to create a new layer at the front. We only need 3 more layers. So we'll create 3 layers total. And you want to tap on the top 2 and clipping mask them to this new empty layer here. On this empty layer, go to your colors and grab the color in the top left of the palette. Brush we're going to use is going to be the dry ink. We want maximum opacity size around about 30%. And then over here, you're just going to want to create blades of grass. Now, the important thing to also note is if I go to my brush and I go to my dry ink and I tap on it, then go to stabilization and go to streamline and stabilization, and then you'll be able to end up with some nice smooth lines like I'm creating here. And all you want to do is just create varying lines, all kind of leaning inwards. You want to kind of go past this horizontal middle point of our design and just create lots and lots of flicks, and then you should end up slowly starting to build this up. Now what you can also go ahead and do is maybe create like tapered lines here and there for like larger like leaves almost like this. So try to create like a taper on the end almost for like a sharp end to a leaf like that maybe, and then maybe like another one there off of that, and just varying it up with large almost like tropical like shaping here, and then in between you can have your blades of greenery. There we go. Now you don't need to necessarily make it too chunky towards the top, because you kind of want to also be able to see the rest of the design as well. So I'm going to start a little bit lower and try and sort of build in this little plinth of land. In a minute we're also going to introduce like the trunk of a palm tree. Ultimately you just want to kind of make sure that you can just do this and then fill it in. So you've ended up with like a big blocky area down here, at least in the very bottom left hand corner for your tropical kind of scene. There we go. And then from that, let's go ahead and draw in that palm tree. So the palm tree is going to run up to around about, say here. You're going to bring it down. So once you've started, you just want to kind of swoop that around a little bit like that, and then just go up kind of parallel to it, get a little bit thinner towards the top, fill that in. You can always adjust it afterwards with like liquify, give it some bumps and lumps. Lovely. And maybe a few more blades just towards the base of it, just to block that in as well. Maybe a few more in behind. Lovely. Let's then go ahead and go to our layer above that we clipped. We'll go to our colors. We'll grab the green first of all, the middle of that first column. We'll bring the opacity down to about 35%. And as we typically do, we just run through and we try to accent a few little blades here and there, a few little leaves and whatnot, so you can go up like there. And because you've got a low opacity, if you layer yourself on top of yourself like this, you can add in multiple color tones. And then you're just running through your grass, trying to see what you'd highlight, trying to think of which ones are probably in the shade a bit more. So this does come down to you a little bit of just making sure you know, pick and choose where you want to add the color. And it's not to say you can't identify like a blade of grass in here, for example, but some of them you do, as I love to say, be sacrificial. A little bit of that. Let's then also go to our colors and grab this color here, so bottom left of the palette. This is mainly for our palm tree, so we're going to run all the way down the right edge there, all the way down towards the bottom-ish. And then from there, you want to set your brush size to like about 90% and your opacity down to about 20, and just kind of run along here, light pressure as you touch the screen, and then a little bit heavier towards the right, and just all the way up. There you go. And you can create all the groove and all the tree-like texture. Try and let it sort of fade out a little bit more towards the bottom and be a bit more heavy with your application towards the top there, again to show that little bit of the lighting. And then maybe I'll add in like a few blades here. Let's bring the brush size back down to like 30%. A few little brown bits in here as well, just varying color tones then. Very, very simple. Now don't forget, very important, this is all going to get blurred in this foreground area, so you do not need to stress at all. In fact, I'm going to go back down to my base layer and go to my color for it and just set that to 100%. And I'm just going to thicken that out at the top, I think. Just try and widen that up a bit more. There we go. I think that's looking pretty good. Let's thicken that there just a tiny bit more as well. Lovely. Now the other empty layer that we have, we're going to go up to it, tap on it and change it to add. Make sure you tap on the layer. Go to your colors. We're going to grab the green again, so middle of the first column. Set your opacity to like 35%. Don't be too sort of strong with it. And anything where that moon would probably shine, let's go 50. Let's brighten up some of these areas. A little bit more vibrancy, a little bit more lighting. A little bit on there too. That looks pretty good. I don't want to accent these all too heavily. A little something like that. And grab your orange at the bottom of the first column and just give your palm tree a little bit of a brighter edge up here with a few much smaller but more purposeful kind of detail lines here. So again, I'm still at 30% with the brush size, just adding in a few little lines here like that, just where that moon is. And then from there, you can go ahead and pinch these together onto one layer. Go to your adjustments and go to Gaussian blur. If we move it towards the middle again, we can swipe from left to right, add in like a 7% Gaussian blur. That looks pretty good. And then tap on your adjustments when you're done. And then from there, you can make tweaks if you want. You can go ahead and go to your layers. I would probably grab my like hut like area here, all of it, including the bushes, and grab it and just maybe make uniform. I could scale it up. Of course, that will be different for you in your guide. So just maybe think about it if you also want to do this. You could scale it up and just bring it across the screen, take away a little bit of the water like so. I actually really like that scaled up. So I'm going to tap on my cursor when I'm done. So that's just something to bear in mind if you want to make that kind of final tweak. It would have looked great like it was before. For me, I just wanted to bring up the scale. And all in all, if we go up to our actions, we turn off our drawing guide and we go full screen with 4, we end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. As always, make sure to tag me in your finished creations wherever you decide to share them. Come and join me over on Patreon, because that's where I post 3 exclusive tutorials every single month. And subscribe to the channel, because otherwise you're going to miss out on all of my weekly tutorials here on YouTube. And if you like this video here on YouTube, you will love this one on the screen now. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.